and show you guys how I would go from this pose A to this pose B. And what we're going to start with is the root through the spine. And I'm going to recommend turning off your arms and legs at this stage. Definitely the arms, the legs, depending on how much they're going to be interfering. And what we want to do is start working in a little bit more of a layered approach, where we're now going to start with the root and work our way down the hierarchy. The next main mass after the root would be the rib cage or the whole spine, and then the head. And we're going to take it chunk by chunk and make sure that the spacing and the arcs are working correctly. So the first thing that I like to do is just bracket in that one transition that you're going to work on. So we're really just working from 306 to your next bracket, which is somewhere in here. And just go through your animation one transition at a time and just focus on getting that one transition right for the moment. And if you do that, it tends to be a lot more manageable chunk to bite off, and you won't feel overwhelmed. And the first thing that I like to do is track the root using my motion trail script. So a couple of things that I do in terms of setup before getting into the splining phase is I open up my motion trail script and I try to place that off in my margin because I'm constantly going to be using that. And I'm constantly going to be using this zoom script that I believe I showed you guys before. It's this magnifying glass that lets you zoom in on your scene, and I'll explain that one more later. And the reason I close Maya down a little bit is because then I can toggle back and forth and I don't lose these palettes. If I lose them, it tends to get frustrating, so it's easier to just have them over to the side of a Maya window that's not fully open. So tracking the root, that's where we start because that's the root of the entire hierarchy. So I'm going to find a spacer display size that works for this character. Let's try 0.5 and track the root. That looks too big, so I'm going to just hit Z and undo it. Let's try 0.1. Apply that, and I want to be showing NURBS curves. And I can see that path of that jump. So we see the anticipation and then the jump. And in stepped mode, it's going to look a little bit blocky. Now, typically, what's most critical is that the arc looks good from your real camera view. But in a case like this, I'm going to take it over to a side view because it's a little bit hard for me to see what the spacing truly is from this angle. But ultimately, I have to make sure that the tangents will look good, the arcs will look good from this specific angle. I'm also going to go ahead and turn off control curves. I find that those just obscure your view of your scene a bit. And if you have a good picker, you shouldn't really need to have control curves turned on. And it's just a little bit cleaner way to work. So let's go to a side view here and take a look at that arc. So once I've tracked that arc, I can convert the root for just that move. Okay. I'm going to convert the tangents for just that move, and just on the root, I'm going to highlight them by shift, left mouse clicking and dragging from my bracket A. Here's my bracket A, held pose. Here's my bracket B. I'm just highlighting that transition area of those breakdowns and in-betweens that we created. And I'm going to right-click on that area, just right-click on that red area, and go to Tangents, Plateau. And you'll see that it's now added extra in-betweens for me, and it's a little bit more rounded out in this case. So let's take a look at that. Before converting them, they would have looked like this. And notice that you can see that this is sort of a connect the dots version of what your splined tangent is ultimately going to look like. You can see, here's his, this green line here is his translate Y. And you can see how that would be kind of connecting the dots of an anticipation and then a jump, bouncing ball, arc. So he's created enough of an outline on 2s that we can reasonably let Maya do some of the work, and it'll give us pretty good results. If you haven't put enough detail in there, you're not going to get good results. So some of you might hit the plateau button and not have motion that looks as good as this. It means that you haven't done enough work in your breakdowns. Now, even though you might have done good breakdowns, there's still going to be issues with your spacing and so forth that you're going to want to tweak once you see it in this mode. And notice the spacing is pretty even on the route from here on. And by the way, X-ray mode is really useful for this stage. I tend to turn off my environment, turn off everything except for my character, and work in X-ray mode, turning joints and anything else off that's unnecessary, and then it's really clean. You just are able to see your motion trail and your character and customize it. So in this case, the anticipation that he goes into here, I probably want the spacing to be a little bit tighter towards the bottom. On an anticipation, we tend to have more compression frames towards the anticipation pose. So what I would do is go in here and try to influence this a little bit. With the motion trail on and with auto key on, I can go over pre-existing keys and customize them. So this represents the anticipation now. I'm going to just bracket it out. And so now I'm going to have a little bit more hold time on that anticipation. And I've kind of created an extra hold there. What I can do within that hold is create more ease through that hold by playing around with my translate Y and creating more clustered curves towards the bottom of that arc. And now my motion trail is no longer valid because my motion trail was for a certain frame range. I have to go and redo it if I change my frame range dramatically. So I'm just going to create a new motion trail for this new range. And you see that I've created a lot of keys clustered towards the bottom. And that'll kind of show that build-up, that compression before I jump out of the pose. Now, as far as the jump is concerned, I could do things to shape this arc a little bit, and I like to stay on the existing keyframes rather than go on in-betweens as much as possible. So I could increase the steepness of this. I could have him pop out a little bit more quickly. If you have a lot of compression like this, you can pop out more quickly out of that pose. You still want to have a couple frames of ease out. And then you want your spacing to go from ease out to gradually getting wider. Towards the top of your arcs, you tend to cluster your curves a little bit.
Does that work without the auto key on?
And really, you should be looking at it from your true camera view to see if the timing feels right.